Hi everyone, Jack here. And my cat Luna. So hi Luna. Before we jump into the video, I recommend you watch my previous video, Why Did the Carian Queen Grieve? Found somewhere on your screen now. If you haven't watched my previous video, that's okay. I'll go over the main theories from that video a little bit after the introduction. With that, thank you to everyone who watched my first two videos. Elden Ring is a very special piece of art to me, as I suspect it is to you as well. And I want to take time doing a Q&A style video after each mainline lore video to present my theories plainly, as well as answer or respond to questions or comments from the previous video. Like any piece of art, the only people who know the absolute truth of the story, character motivations, or message are the authors. We can look at the previous work and artistic influences of George R. R. Martin, Hidetaka Miyazaki, but mainly we have to work with what is present within the art and determine what it means and what is happening. That being the case, what I get out of Elden Ring is what is true to me, as what you, Vadividya, Smotown, or anyone else gets out of this game, or any art for that matter, is true to them. So here, instead of just telling you what I believe, I'll explain why I believe it. Maybe understanding where I'm coming from can help you build your own theories and help add to this discussion. In the future, if you have any questions or disagreements with how I present the lore or story in a future video, please leave a comment. I'd like to answer them. We're here to talk about Elden Ring, so let's have a conversation. We all learn by sharing our ideas with each other. In case you haven't watched my previous video, or if there was something that you missed after watching it, here are the main theories that I present in that video. Rennala is the last queen of Caria and comes from a long line of queens. Rennala is the Carian queen who migrated the Carians from the mountaintops to Liurnia. The Carian queens are all secret worshippers of the Dark Moon. Rennala is Renna the Snow Crone, or at the very least, Renna has some familial relationship to Rennala and Ranni. Maybe a grandmother, or who knows. Radagon is aware of the Dark Moon and the major implications that could have. Ranni's death during the Night of the Black Knives is what broke Rennala and led her to a depressive state. Radagon truly did love Rennala and left the Amber Egg to help her and not hurt her. And finally, the big one, the Night of the Black Knives occurred while Godfrey was still Elden Lord and Radagon was still in Liurnia. So without further ado, let's jump into some of the questions. Santiago Hara 8056 says, Rennala is the first queen of Caria. So we have a few pieces in game that kind of leads me believing that's not the case. The main one is at the end of Phase 1 of Rennala's boss fight, transitioning into Phase 2. Ranni has a voiceover that explicitly calls Rennala the last queen of Caria. Some interpret that to be she's the last one and also the first one, but if we look at some of the other items in the game that people like to point to as proving that Rennala is the first queen, it's kind of ambiguous. For example, the Stargazer heirloom, a talisman engraved with the legend of a queen. The young astrologer gazed at the night sky as she walked. She had always chased the stars every step of her journey. Then she met the full moon, and in time, the astrologer became a queen. So here, it could be Rennala, or it could be any queen of Caria. In my interpretation, I kind of see it as a coming of age for the princesses, where they have to meet the moon. In this case, it says the full moon before they can become a queen. We'll explain that further down with some of the other questions that were asked, but to me it's ambiguous. It doesn't say that Rennala is the first queen, it just says the legend of a queen. If I was to talk about the Queen of England, which queen am I talking about? You would have to pick up from context clues. I could be talking about Queen Victoria, or I could be talking about Queen Elizabeth II. You know, you don't know unless I tell you which queen. So if I say a queen, it's not very clear. There is some ways that we can, square the circle with Rennala being the very first queen. Maybe Caria isn't that old. Maybe Rennala is incredibly ancient, but I don't think that's a very common thing throughout the lands between. Death isn't there, but just because people don't die doesn't mean we have people who live forever, except, maybe the Eternal Queen, who we'll talk about some other time. We also have Rennala's full moon, a sorcery associated with the Carian Queen. So it's Renala's full moon, but it's associated with the Carian queen. And in the item description, it says Queen Renala encountered this enchanting moon when she was young, and later bewitched the academy. So here, it kind of, in my head, I'm seeing it as this is the sorcery of the Carian queen. The queen could be, any woman within the Carian royal lineage. And it's showing that to become queen, you meet the moon. On the opposite side, we have Rani's dark moon, legendary sorcery associated with the Carian queen. So we have two sorceries of moons. One is Renala's, the other is Rani's, but they're both associated with the queen. Is it saying that Rani is the queen, even though Renala is still the queen? Could be that Rani is technically the queen, even though I think she's referred to as princess. It's not very clear how, royalty is passed down within the Carians. But with the ambiguity between sorcery associated with the queen, sorcery associated with the queen, leads me to believe that it's just the Carian queen, whoever she may be. In Rani's dark moon description, it said the moon was encountered by a young Rani led by the hand of her mother, Renala. What she beheld was cold, dark, and veiled in occult mystery. We'll pick this up in the next question, but here we see Renala is aware of the dark moon. She's showing it to Rani. And the rest of the item description says the moon was encountered by young Rani led by the hand of her mother, Renala. So the dark moon is something that Renala showed her daughter, which kind of fits into my head of the mother queen passing down to the princess, the lineage of Carian queens. And further, we'll talk about the difference between full and dark moon. Next piece of evidence is the discarded palace key. Opens a treasure chest passed down to Carian princesses. So there's been multiple princesses in Caria. I've seen some people float that, Renala had multiple daughters and no one talks about them, which, that doesn't really pass the sniff test to me. I think it's more likely that she, is just, Rani's a princess, Renala was once a princess, Renala's mother was a princess, all before they became queens. So the chest that the palace key opens is for the dark moon ring, a wedding ring, and it's, there is a real life tradition in the real world of mothers passing down their wedding rings to their daughter. So, I could see there being at least 3 generations of princesses and queens because of this item. The next one we have is the Dark Moon Greatsword, a moon greatsword bestowed by a Carian queen. We have that, again, very ambiguous, upon her spouse to honor long-standing tradition. So, it's a tradition long-standing. If the tradition was only Renala and Rani, that doesn't really seem long-standing, even if it's, I guess you could say if Renala is 1,000 years old and she did it once and then her daughter does it once, that counts as long-standing. But to me, it seems there's generations, and this is done over and over and over again. We have the Carian filigreed crest. I didn't include this in the video, I kind of forgot about it. But this one is an honor said to have been once awarded to Carian knights who served as direct retainers to the kingdom's princesses. Now there is only one princess, Rani, daughter of Renala. So, maybe you could read that Renala had so many daughters, but, I'm seeing multiple princesses, a lineage of them. So that's kind of how I paint in my head. Renala is not the first queen. She's explicitly said to be the last queen, and there could have been many princesses who became many queens before them for who knows how old. Danielle D8655 says, Renala's moon is the full moon, not the same dark moon as Rani's. From my perspective, the full moon and the dark moon are different things, but the same thing. I'll explain that a little bit more in detail, but they're like two sides of the same coin, or like one's a duplicate of the other, one's mimicking the other. If we look at Renala's full moon again, sorcery associated with the Carian queen. Queen Renala encountered this enchanting moon when she was young, and then Rani's dark moon, and again, legendary sorcery associated with the Carian queen. So for both being associated with the queen, I'm seeing that as both the full moon and the dark moon is something associated with the Carian queen. We also have Renala encountered the full moon when she was young, but in the dark moon it says when Rani encountered it was young, it was because her mother showed her the dark moon. If we look towards the Great Hood item description, which is found after you find Painting in Castle Soul, the item description of the Great Hood says, in quotes, so this is coming from the perspective of someone who wore this hood, it's not a fact, it's just a fact that they said it since it's in quotations. Yes, surely, this is the moon that young Renala gazed upon. So that's kind of, to me, is a little tongue-in-cheek. To him, He says, yes, this is the full moon. This is what Renala is gazing upon. But since it's in quotes, it's not necessarily mean it's a fact of the world. I kind of think that there is a duplicitous nature between Carians to the world. They follow this full moon, but in reality, it's the cold, occult moon. Coming back to the Discard's Palace key again, opens a treasure chest passed down to Carian princesses. When you open it, the dark moon ring is in there. It's a wedding ring, and the wedding ring has been passed down from generations to generations, and it depicts the dark moon. So, to the world, the Carian queens are full moon witches. But in reality, if the queen and her consort know the truth, that it's really the dark moon, and it's so much, in fact, that they have their wedding ring that looks like it. Come back to Dark Moon Greatsword. It's bestowed from a Carian queen to her spouse in long-standing tradition. And in that item description, we also have Ranni's sigil is a full moon, cold and leaden. So the dark moon is a full moon, just a different type of full moon. I'm working on something right now. I'll just throw up something on the screen to show this. So I'm working from memory. But if you are in Liurnia and you look at the Erd tree when the moon is in the sky, you'll see the full moon casting no rays of light. If you go to Ranni's Rise, you'll see beams of light piercing the clouds coming from the west, out from the ocean, but nothing's in the sky. If you go then to the Moonlight Altar, behind the Erd tree is the dark moon, but if you look towards Ranni's Rise, there's the full moon casting light. So I'm trying to work through, in a future video, how the dark moon has always been present, hiding behind the Erd tree, and the full moon is hidden away from people to be able to see it. Maybe the visual representation will kind of give you the idea, but for right now, it's just something that trying to work through where all those pieces fall. Solute367 says, "Not gonna lie, I think you're cute. This has no lore significance, just saying that it flattered me, and if you want me to read your comment, just say something nice to me, and then I'll read it." The 1384 says, "Are those girls that are born anew failed copies of Ranni? They can't walk like female Albinaurics." So that's something I in the grand scheme of things, I believe that Renala is grieving the loss of her daughter. Radagon gives her the Amber Egg as a way to console her. Using the Great Rune of the Unborn, she can do the process of rebirth and, maybe bring her daughter back. Maybe there's a bigger story significance there. Maybe, Radagon was scheming with Renala in some way to bring Ranni back. Maybe he's involved with that Dark Moon shenanigans since he's aware of it, but that's for later down the line. But we see that with Albinaurics, the young women and then the old men, their legs don't work. So there's something connected between Albinaurics and the inability to walk, at least the first generation. And we see that Renala doesn't stand or walk during her boss fight, or ever, until the apparition of her appears during the second phase. Ranni creates that. We're not actually fighting her. So she's lying down the whole time. And we see these little girls, I assume little girls, crawling around on the ground. Their legs don't work. So with the Amber Egg, with the Great Rune of the Unborn in it, gameplay-wise, you have to use a larval tear, which is core of a creature of mimicry known as a silver tear. Material required by the Amber Egg, cradled by Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, to birth people anew. So in-game, that is the mechanic that we need to use it. When we do box quest line, if you do it in a certain way, you can give him a larval tear, and he knows exactly what it's used for. He knows that he has to go to Renala to use it. So we see as Renala is creating her daughter over and over again, using larval tears, and that's why they have that, inability to use their legs, because it's kind of something like the Albinaurics. It also kind of implies something interesting for our character. What does it mean that our character can use larval tears in the Amber Egg? Maybe if you look at my name of my YouTube channel, you might think what that could be, but that's for a future video. Next comment is from Unusual Box. They said, "I love your videos, man." Thank you. "I think there is something to the snowy crone. Great food for thought." So this isn't a necessary question, but I just wanted to highlight, there's a lot of, theory crafting on who Renna the Snow Crone is. In the video, I presented as Renna is Renala in disguise, for two reasons mainly. Renna is just Renala with the la cut off the end, which is like, kind of cheap way to do it. She could also be maybe like, I think, maybe maternal grandmother, possibly, you know, or she could be ancient, she could be who knows what, you know, but there's some familial connection to Rani, Renala, and the Snow Crone. You know, I don't think Rena is this mysterious figure who is not connected to the Carians at all. I think she's either an identity the queens take on, or she is someone who's connected to the mothers and the daughters. When we look at Rani's Dark Moon again, it was encountered by young Rani and led by the hand of her mother, Renala. Now, this could be Renala led Rani to the Snowy Crone, or it could be Renala, disguised as Rena, is leading Rani to the Dark Moon. So for Rani's perspective, she doesn't know it's her mother. She thinks it's someone else. If you look at the Glintstone Ice Crag, it's a sorcery used by the old Snow Witch. The Snowy Crone taught young Rani to fear the Dark Moon as she imparted her cold sorcery. So the Crone is who taught Rani about the Dark Moon, but Renala led her to the moon. So there is some knowledge there. In the video, I say it's Renala is the Snow Witch, but you know, it really doesn't matter who exactly the Snow Witch is. All that really matters is that she is someone who's part of the family. It's supposed to connect that there is a familial bond and tradition with the Dark Moon. The Snow Witch hat, once worn by a Snowy Crone who the young Rani encountered deep in the woods. She was a witch, well-versed in cold sorceries. It's said that the doll that houses Rani's soul was modeled after her. That old witch was Rani's secret mentor. Again, it goes to show that Rena is who taught Rani about the Dark Moon. But if we look at the Dark Moon item description, Renala led her to it. So, you know, either Renala knows who Rena is, or Renala is Rena. Either answer suffice for the whole theory. To build the story and the narrative that I see it doesn't really matter who she is, as long as both Renala, Rena, and Rani know each other. Last comment. Mawal28 says, your timeline is a little weird. You say the Night of the Black Knives happened while Radagon was living with Renala in Liurnia, and that Rani's death would have been the first reason for Renala's depression. But the thing that I always thought that, Godwin met Mikola and Melania before his death, meaning that the Night of the Black Knives would occur while Radagon was already in the capital and after Godfrey was sent away. So I think the main piece of evidence that people use to say that the Night of the Black Knives occurred when Radagon was Elden Lord is that Mikola has a affinity for Godwin in some way. And that proves that if Mikola has an affinity for Godwin, he knows Godwin, he must have met him, and that can only occur after Radagon is back in the capital. But there's a few holes in that assumption, because it's an assumption when it comes down to it. One of them is we don't know when Mikola and Melania were born. Radagon is Marika, but we don't know how long that's been the case. Radagon only appeared during the Liurnia Wars. He could have been existing long before he invaded Liurnia, and him and Marika could have had the twin Empyreans and hidden them. It's not the first time that Marika's had twins and hid them somewhere. Morgott and Moog are the Omen twins, born by Godfrey and Marika, and they're hidden in the sewers for who knows how long. So I think there's a possibility that they're hidden. Mikola could have an affinity for Godwin without ever having to meet him. It could just be, you know, a sadness he feels that his half-brother was murdered. Or it could be a ploy. He might not actually feel sad. He could be trying to hide his true intentions. Or it could be, you know, Mikola has some type of soul spirit powers and he can commune with spirits in a way, and Godwin not having a spirit kind of affects him. We don't know what Mikola's powers are, but we know there's some connection between him and spirits. He was if we were looking at the Shadow of the Erdtree image, he is the owner of Torrent, and when we meet Rani at the church, she gives us the spirit calling bell, telling us that Torrent's former master wanted us to have that bell. So I think there's some connection with Mikola and be able to commune with spirits. There's other evidence, but I'm going to leave that for another time. So the point is that we really don't know when the Night of the Black Knives happened, unless you look at Roger, who tells us in his dialogue that it happened way before the shattering of the Elden Ring and during the age of the Erd Tree. The age of the Erd Tree is the age of Godfrey. When Radagon becomes Elden Lord, that's starting the golden, that's the fundamentalist age, where the Erd Tree loses its sap, it doesn't give any blessings anymore, and they're starting to look at the Erd Tree from a scientific lens. So the age of the Erd Tree is when the soldiers were blessed in the dew and they were fighting the war and the giants and yada yada yada. Godwyn's assassination is the catalyst for a lot of things that happened, but it didn't mean that, Godwyn was murdered, the Elden Ring is now shattered the next night, and then Marek is stuck in the tree the night after that. It doesn't have to happen all next to each other. It could be hundreds of years of events happening in between them before we really get the big explosion, the wars, and where our character shows up. We're going to be exploring Godwyn, Miquella, and the Knight of the Black Knives in the next video. I'm thinking it's going to be titled something along the lines of, Miquella's Hidden Crime. I have something I think you guys are really going to enjoy. The script is coming along very nicely. It's a little more ambitious. We're going to be kind of doing from a perspective of the player character, discovering what the eclipse really means, and trying to figure out how does Miquella tie to the eclipse, and how does the eclipse tie to Godwyn. So, something to look forward to. Other videos coming down the line. We have all the endings explained, literally, like what literally is happening in each and every single ending. What exactly is the Elden Ring and the Elden Beast, as well as the Greater Will and the other outer gods. I think I have a good understanding of how they work, at least, from my perspective at least. And also uncovering the history of the ancient dynasties, as well as the Order of Rot, and a lot of exciting stuff. So hope you enjoyed this video. It's kind of rambly, it's a little question answer, it's not very, it was lightly scripted, pretty casual. Thinking of doing this after each mainline video. There is going to be a scripted, edited, cut, whatever video coming out soon, but this is just to fill in the gaps of kind of like why I believe certain things and the evidence that I use to kind of build that theory. Without further ado, I say goodbye.
Done what I've had to do to improve, and you can tell me what you think about that, where you all at. I got a whole new thing to bring the fun. Put another with me in the rain, they leave it charm. Nothing better than when next go down and up. Haven't I made this crystal clear enough? Hustle hard and wide on the move in a room full of heads and a many point of views, and I'm sure to be another one that people don't approve of. I remind you every time I rhyme, you suck. Highly contagious, underrated. Make way for the mind of rhymes created. When every line's like running rubber on the pavement, what can I say? I'm nothing to play with. This is what I wrote for you, don't lose load. Fitted ball cap and the dope breath on. In the zone with the gold microphone, is a lab rat with his backpack always on. No excuse, I will destroy. I know not enjoy evidence that I've been legit and what's kept in dark cracks and crevices within. And I mean this truly yours. What is it that I become? Dwindling to nothing again and then filling up the ink pen with everything. No excuse, I will destroy. I know not enjoy evidence that I've been legit and what's kept in dark cracks and crevices within. And I mean this truly yours. What is it that I become? Dwindling to nothing again and then filling up the ink pen with everything.